This is going to be part 3 of my Introduction into CSS series. Let's continue where we left off. So selector types, element we've already touched on. Any HTML element can be used as a selector. So in this case, we've already used body and P, but you can use image, H1, break, H2, unordered list, and list item, etc., etc., etc. Right? Do keep in mind, this P, or whatever HTML element you use, targets all instances of that HTML element. So this P here will target all HTML P elements and change the font color to green, right? So as an example, let's add another P element here, refresh the page. And as you can see down below, we've got this green hello. So it has also inherited that green font color, right? So then how do we specify a particular P or a specific HTML element? Let's say we want this first paragraph to be a different color to this paragraph. That's when we use something like an ID or a class. So ID and class are both HTML element attributes. They provide additional data to the HTML element, and we can use it to select specific HTML elements. So an ID, let's go ahead and add an ID to this P element. Generally speaking, you can only have one ID in an HTML document, one specific ID. So let's call this one first para. So we can only have one first para ID in this HTML document. Now, in order to target an ID, we use this hash and then the name of the ID. So first para. Do note there's no space between the hash and the ID name. And then we can proceed to add the styling rule set here. Let's change the color to green. All right, let's remove this to avoid confusion. All right, so now we expect the P elements to have a blue font, and then we want this first paragraph with the ID of first para to have a font color of green. Let's check our web page, refresh. So that first paragraph is green. Now let's change this to yellow, yellow, and refresh. And so now that's changed to yellow, while this is still blue. Okay. Now let's say, what if we want to reuse a CSS rule set? So that's when we can use something like classes. So classes, you can have more than one class in the same HTML document, as opposed to having only one unique ID in an HTML document. All right, so as an example, let's make a class. Let's add a class called big font. And in this P, let's also add that class, big font, and save. To target a class, we use a full stop and then the name of the class. So in this case, big font, and then the curly braces and the rule set. Let's change the font size to 50 pixels. So now what do we expect? We expect all paragraphs, well, the first and the second paragraph, to have a large font, but we expect this first paragraph only to inherit this yellow font color. All right, so let's refresh. So now you can see both paragraphs have a large font, but the first paragraph inherits that yellow font from its ID, while the rest of the text has this red font inherited from the body. All right, so that's ID and classes.